I'm going to take a very high-level view of what's happening in the world related to change. Basically, that's one of the parts of the job that I have, is to look around the world and make points of connection, find out where change is happening, where the rules are being rewritten, and where the future is emerging. So what's driving change? It's seemingly everything these days. First and foremost, information is everywhere. It's traveling from the world into our brains and back out again at an ever faster pace. It's changing the way we behave. Yes, the world is faster. It's not your imagination. In fact, we're looking at our mobile phones 30% more than we did a mere 4 years ago. In cities, we're walking 10% faster than we did 10 years ago. Those are just a few little fun facts. The world, as we know, is also more mobile. With more computing power in your pocket, that means much more distributed models like the ones we're talking about here this week with distributed manufacturing. And of course, we continue to be more connected. We've seen what happens when 3 billion people are connected via the internet. Now get ready for what happens when 50 billion machines come online by 2020. Well, that all adds up to one thing for sure, and that is complexity. Look, when it comes to change, we have the same drivers that we've always had: technology, geopolitics, human behavior. But now all of this is accelerated by the instantaneous digital nervous system that is effectively reorganizing our people, our money, our information, and our things. So what's emerging from this state of affairs is also disrupting, and I think that makes us feel very unsettled in many ways. Because what's emerging isn't fully clear, but it's going to emerge. And we don't know whether it's going to be a good thing or it's going to disrupt us in a good way or not. I say, welcome to the emergent era. Well, what do I mean by this? Well, in science, I'm a big science geek, and I've been absolutely taken by this concept of emergence lately as I started to think about the new things that are emerging. Well, emergence, if you know this concept from science, it explains complexity that can arise from seemingly simple rules. It's how order sometimes emerges from chaos. It's when seemingly separate and random events or different behaviors converge and create a totally new superstructure, a totally new pattern. It's what allows ants to collaborate and form all kinds of new behaviors, anthills, from individual ants to the collective. It's what creates computers. It's the phenomenon that powers computers out of simple circuits. And it's what makes our brain happen from simple neurons. But why am I talking about this here, and why now? Why is it relevant? Well, I think it's relevant because a lot of change that we're seeing is coming from different fields. It's from economics, it's from media, it's manufacturing while we're here, politics, technology, and they're all expressing the change in very emergent ways. And it really comes down to this for me. We are collectively and spontaneously reorganizing around our digital information flows. Take a minute to think about that. I mean, it really is, the digital flow is what's driving us into the future. So what I want to do to wrap up here is say, okay, so we know this. Now, how do we react? How do we be ready for what emerges in our organizations? First and foremost, I think it's everyone's job. I don't care where you are in an organization, it's everyone's job to get digitized. And secondly, every leader in every organization, whether you're leading a team, a company, a country, I think you come to realize pretty quickly where we are that your job is about culture and it's about change. So it means we need to end our reliance on some of the bureaucratic and the bureaucratic ways we've dealt with change in the past, and we have to start reorganizing around these information flows. Look, the word bureaucracy itself comes from an obsolete technology. A bureau is a writing desk. It's a physical enclosure for information. It's fixed in one place. And with it comes all kinds of power as people and information tend to accumulate around it, and sort of like fat does around a cell. Bureaucracies were necessary at a time in our history. It's when information was scarce and you had to go one place to get it. But the world is so different now. Information flows everywhere. And to stop that creates a liability. So the opposite of bureaucracy is a radically open communication system. It's only when people have access to information and, importantly, the permission to act on and access that information that real change starts to happen, that you get speed and the resiliency that's quite apparent in emergent structures. So I think there are three ways to get there, and I'd like to end by sort of offering what I think are three principles for leadership in this emergent time. The first I like to say is power the MO. By MO, I don't just mean modus operandi, which is a characteristic way of doing things. I also mean mission objective or mindset orientation. A good MO is a habit of mind that cements the larger vision of an organization with the tactical objectives of a person or team. I think you hear that in some of the leadership of the UAE. We have a vision, let's go forward. But what new emergent leaders have to remember is that the vision is empowering, but their teams have to find their way forward. When I say empower, I mean encourage your teams to really grab that power. Let go of some of the traditional controlling systems that many of us leaders have. You know that time when we think by controlling others, we're going to control the outcome? Well, in this new emergent era, we're all evolving to go from being managers to being collaborators. In fact, managers are now best as coaches, helping their teams get to live out that vision and make those objectives come true. So instead of control, we have to emphasize feedback, and I can't stress this enough. Feedback is a critical factor as we organize around information. Excuse me, you have to seek feedback, you have to give it, and most importantly, you have to use it. And with feedback means that we have to open up to data and information that we may not want to hear. In fact, I found one of the most important questions I can ask teams I work with is, tell me one thing I don't want to hear. And trust me, I usually don't want to hear it. So another benefit of feedback is that it gives people and teams permission to kind of fail early and fail fast. It's a bit of the mantra now of entrepreneurs, but any organization can adapt to this. Because when we're not afraid to ask for feedback and share what we're doing earlier, you can start to see that you can build products and processes that are actually what people need, not just because we think we should build them. So at GE, we've taken this to heart. We label this kind of approach of management, we call it FastWorks. And it's really become a way of working, a way of thinking that allows all kinds of different parts of the organization from product development to human resources to communication, to function at market speed, to just continually iterate with the customer in mind, and basically take tools that have helped us lean out our factories and now put them into the way we do business. The second thing I'd like to think about is what I call get used to living in the in-between. Learning to live in the in-between, I think, may be the defining characteristic of this time that we're living in. And by in-between, I mean you can't really grab on hold of what it is. The old is going away, and the new is emerging, and they're both still there. And it's happening in pretty much every industry. Think about manufacturing. We're still manufacturing in some ways, the old way, because it works. and increasingly in new ways of digitization, of additive manufacturing. And in some cases, we may need to harness both of them. It may not be either or. For companies like mine, we're looking at living in the digital and the physical. And are you digital? Are you physical? In fact, you're both. So one thing this means is that you have to abandon the idea that we can operate with absolute knowledge. Those days are going away. Having more data is, in fact, giving us more options. It actually makes us potentially have more futures. It creates less certainty. Many of our legacy tools just aren't set up to deal with this. They can't address the magnitude of possibilities, and then many of the newer tools are still being refined. So we have to learn to live and toggle back between both of those way forward. So at GE, we've had to learn how to think of living in the in-between. We're global and we're local. Increasingly, we're finding that we have to be good at seeding new ideas in regions and cities to go to these innovation hubs where the ecosystem is forming, where oftentimes it's at a much smaller, specialized scale, where the first product run may be very small, maybe only a few dozen or a few hundred. We're very proud to announce yesterday a partnership with Mubadala and the Dubai Futures Foundation to create 2 microfactories in the region, one in Dubai and one here in Abu Dhabi, that's going to be very much set up for those small batch runs to allow a different kind of ecosystem to erupt. We're learning that to keep the momentum, we have to think about the future and the past of our workforce. We know that some of the best people in the world don't all work for us. We've had to go to a model of open challenges where we say, hello world, here's a challenge, come and solve us. I'm happy to say we've found an amazing amount of intellect here in the Gulf region. And that's the great thing for all of us. We can go anywhere in the world and find new ideas and problems, answers to our problems. One of the things we've done recently is we've announced we want to double the number of women in technology, in science and technology roles. We know that we have to work really hard to create the kind of programs in place to make our company attractive to a diverse set of minds. And throughout our workforce, we're keeping our eye on the kind of skills that we're going to need now in the next 3 to 5 to 10 years. To do that, we're working with educational ecosystems everywhere around the world. We're helping seed changes that we hope will blossom into the future. Take 3D printing. We're aggressively moving into that future and working quite aggressively with secondary and colleges around the world to see how we can start to seed programs for additive manufacturing. So to meet the challenges of the future, we need minds that are trained in scientific, and I also think not to forget we're going to need minds trained in the creative arts as well. There are a lot of unpredictable futures, and creativity is going to be in more demand than ever. So look, I call this set of diffuse skills emergent leadership skills, and I think they're going to matter more and more for yourself, for your team, for your entire business. And finally, I think it's been referenced here already today, and I think it will be a big theme as we go forward in this new era, the collaboration of minds and machines together. Really, there's an opportunity to tap into that. Yes, there are some challenges, but I think incredible opportunities. Because of the power of machine learning and analytics, we're discovering that our best minds may not all be human. But even better is what happens when we combine the two. So one of the things we're doing at GE right now is we're building digital replicas of every major technology system we make. Think of a jet engine, a locomotive, an MRI, and each one has a digital twin. And it's paired with a specific machine in the physical world. And this digital twin in the digital world, so let's take a jet engine, for example. It incorporates information from design to manufacture, how it was made, where it's been operated, and in what conditions. And the digital twin is useful because it can tell you when an individual component has a problem, when it needs to be replaced, long before anything happens, making business operations more effective, more productive, more efficient. So we've started applying these predictive technologies into the way we run our organizations. For example, at our Global Operations Center, we've adapted machine learning and algorithmic robots into the process for things like working with suppliers and how we do contracts. We're actually able to use machine learning to predict which parts of a contract are going to need renegotiating, so we don't have to waste time on the parts that don't matter. So look, in our machines and in our structure, we've gone from programming machines to teaching them. And now they're beginning to free us up to learn more and better ways of working. Far from replacing our jobs, we think smart machines are transforming work for the better. Look, we're all in the early stages of this new, I guess we'd call it project, that will, I think, forever alter human talent and free us up for what we do best, providing critical insight, creativity, strategy. Let's not forget human mind power is really needed in those areas. So look, I've offered here what I think is a glimpse of the future. It's going to be more fluid, more flexible, certainly more flexible in the way we work, less constrained by bureaucracy. It's going to call our best selves forward by allowing us to focus on our deepest and most challenging problems and to not have to do them alone, to do them in collaboration. Instead of responding to increased speed and complexity with bureaucracy, I think this is really important. We need to respond with creativity, with flexibility, with strategy. That comes from the leaders of an organization, but it also comes from every single one of the organization's members. Digital is making our jobs less defined. We're just going to have to get used to that. It's also giving us the potential for much greater impact. So despite automation, despite artificial intelligence, emergent organizations urgently need leaders to attract the right people, who have the right mindset, to define goals, to live values, to paint a vision of a future with beliefs, to provide renewal, inspiration, and imagination. You know, ant colonies and brain cells may not need human visionaries, but our institutions, our human institutions, they always will. So thank you for allowing me to share a few words, and I wish you a very good summit. Thank you.